Let's play a game of what ifs. What if Miami doesn't get Damian Lillard? What if Philly has to keep James Harden? And should Boston be concerned about Malcolm Brogdon being angry? It's all right now on the Locked On NBA podcast.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On NBA podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Yeah, Wednesdays, it's usually me and Jake, but today it's me and Tony East. What's up, Tony East? How you doing, man? Oh, hold on. I accidentally muted you.
Wow.
Now, yeah, I'm starting off with a bang.
John Karalis does not want me here to talk about Damian Lillard, James Harden, and Malcolm Brogdon. I'm excited to be back, though. We haven't talked in a while.
We have not talked in a while. We are very uniquely, as you said, qualified to talk about Malcolm Brogdon. We'll do that later when we play our game of real or fake. We'll talk about Harden later in the second segment. But we are going to get started here with everybody's talking about Damian Lillard. We'll get started here with a hypothetical, which I don't know how hypothetical it really is. Today's show, by the way, brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50+ infection. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. There might be a lot of need for drugs to help the folks in Miami cope with not getting Damian Lillard. But Tony, I feel like, and the guys yesterday talked about this third team that might be coming in. And if you haven't heard that episode, go check it out, because Matt Moore laid out a lot of great scenarios, including, Atlanta, Toronto, getting involved somehow, maybe being as third or fourth teams to facilitate a Dame trade, which I think is, if he's going to get traded, it's the most likely way for him to get traded. But what if he doesn't? I think, Tony, let's just start with this. Portland has incentive to bring Damian Lillard back if they don't like the package that Miami is offering, if they are willing to be uncomfortable in the media, if they're willing to put the pressure on Damian Lillard to come to Portland, come back home and say to people's faces, this is going in a direction that I don't want to be a part of. He's going to be forced to play. The NBA is making it clear they're going to force him to play. I think if they can withstand all of that, it's in their best interest to take this to December, January, when other teams can sit there and say, hey, wait a second, we weren't in on Dame, but we're better than we thought. Maybe a Damian Lillard trade is actually in our best interest. Or maybe Miami struggles and says, oh my God, we are toast without Damian Lillard, and Jimmy Butler is going to kill us if we don't figure out a way. If Portland can do this, Miami has there's a chance here that Miami doesn't get Damian Lillard in the next 2 weeks.
Can I tell you the shifting dynamic of this that I am surprised has not been talked about more?
Please.
In the last week, John, Christian Wood signed with a team, the Lakers.
Yes.
And Kelly Oubre.
I love where you're going with this.
Kelly Oubre 2 days ago signs with Philly. These are the guys that the Heat would theoretically want to have and we're waiting on after a Dame trade, right? They're going to have to send out 2, 3, 4, however many guys to match salaries, to make a trade work, to make Portland happy with the package. And the thought, John Hollinger said this on a podcast he did, I can't remember which one, was he thought they were the leaders for Christian Wood before he joined the Lakers. Oubre had made the same kind of thing, made sense, right? If you're Kelly Oubre, that he could be a good team with playing time in a couple weeks. So it made sense to wait for them. But now you're running out of time to wait. So those guys get their money, as they should. But now if you're the Heat, you're like, dang, if we trade, 3 guys for Dame, you're better, but then you got to get Will Barton and Terrence, the drop is huge. So the pressure on them is a little higher now, right? Because their options to actually fill the credible team but beyond their 3 stars is dwindling. So I think that's good for Portland in their attempt to have leverage. And if it weren't for the NBA very recently coming out and saying stars should play, and here are our rules and fines to do so, I think Portland's best case would be bring him back and just don't play him at all. Because then they can
yeah.
throw their young guys out and lose their games and get their high pick and be happy with the direction they're in. Now, they probably can't get away with that given what the NBA is trying to do right now. I'm sure they could fake some ankle injury or something if they are desperate. But it seems like what you just said makes a lot of sense for Portland, especially with the dwindling options for Miami to just say, we're going to wait until you offer everything because perhaps another team gets involved, or perhaps has been reported by Matt on this podcast yesterday and by Shams and by, I want to say, Mark Spears, like these mystery teams are lurking, like something actually could be happening soon unless you get on it. So there's a lot of dynamics at play, but it is plausible Miami designed up with him, and their team is, even without that, kind of light. They lost Vincent and Strus, so we'll see where they end up going.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing here for Miami. Losing key players. Now, they still have a decent enough roster, but those players had big impacts on the success of the Heat. They were huge for Miami in that run. I'm not going to sit here and say losing Gabe Vincent and Max Strus is, oh my God, Miami's dead. But I think lost in all of this is Miami didn't have the best regular season last year. Right. And we look at them as like, hey, kudos to them for making that run. Spo is just a god of a coach, and Jimmy Butler has a way of willing his team and his teammates, and guys caught fire and all of that stuff. Like, great, but you were in the play-in and a loss away from, like, a quarter away from being eliminated from the playoffs entirely. That's how bad their regular season was. And because Jimmy Butler can't do it 82 games anymore, he has to pace himself. Yep. And they don't have, there are flaws in Tyler Hero's game. There are flaws. You can't have Duncan Robinson out there. The defense suffers. And you're going to be relying this year on guys like Nikola Jovic. You're going to be relying on guys that are unproven. And if anybody's going to get something out of unproven guys, it's Miami. But it's so much to ask. It's so much to ask this team. Kyle Lowry is a shell of himself. How much more can Caleb Martin? Can he do what he did in the playoffs for a whole season? How much more does Kevin Love have? These guys, it's hard for me to think that Miami's going to be able to duplicate what they did last year, because you're going to have to make another run from the lower half of the East. I think if they don't start the season with Dame, I'm not going to say it's a disaster, because they have time in December, by December, but they can't wait till the trade deadline either. If it goes into the season, Miami needs to find a way by December 15th, when all these, the first wave of restrictions are lifted. They have to find a way to start cobbling players together to get a third team, a fourth team involved to make Portland happy. They lose all leverage if the season starts and Damian Lillard is not doing media day in Miami.
Or they have to hope that before December 15th, one of Jovic or Jaime Jaquez is like super good.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow. Good. Yeah, it's strange, right? Because there were injuries involved with Hero and Oladipo, but for their top 12 in minutes per game from the playoffs last year, are not on the team anymore, right? That's a significant thing. Cody Zeller's gone. Oladipo's gone. Strus is gone. Vincent's gone. You could talk about the quality of those players all you want. They were in a playoff rotation at times for a team that was in the finals. Like, that's a big loss. And yes, Josh Richardson will make up some of that. And Kevin Love they'll have for a full season now. And Thomas Bryant could, in theory, make up some of that. But they're still down talent. And they are losing options to replace it. So if they don't get Dame, they are certainly a lighter team in terms of depth. And they're going to be relying on, like you said, the unproven youngsters like Jaquez, like Jovic, or really old dudes like Kevin Love. Or, this is something the Heat are great at, to their credit, guys who are unproven like Orlando Robinson and Haywood Highsmith to be awesome. And yeah, maybe they can, but that's a big risk to take when Jimmy Butler's getting older and Kyle Lowry is very tough to play a lot now. There's, like, you laid it out pretty well. So I think the pressure is shifting towards Miami just because Portland, they're like, our direction's set no matter what we do. So they can wait out the offer all they want, and maybe Dame playing will really hurt, but if he plays bad, that makes it less likely he gets to his destination because his price goes down, more teams can get involved. Like all these dynamics make me think the Heat should want to get it done faster.
They should. I just don't know. It's a magical well in Miami that keeps giving this team water when most teams would be parched, dying of thirst. Miami still keeps finding their way into great performances from guys that you look at this roster, you'd be like, they're done, they're toast. But they keep finding a way. I just don't know how much more magic is left, especially in Jimmy Butler, who, hey, he's just older. It's tough. It's Miami needs to figure out a way. The closer this gets to media day, each day that goes by, I think the pressure is more on Miami. As long as Portland is willing to be uncomfortable over the course of the season. Hey, and they're not competing for anything. So who cares if anybody's comfortable? If I'm running the Blazers, I'm thinking, who cares? Yeah, let's get wild with it. Come on, Dame. So what are you going to say? What are you going to say it's going to make you look better? Nothing. So we're fine with it. So.
I agree. And these situations in media are always really awkward. Like Miles Turner last year, different one because he signed an extension, but I was there. Like he even said he wasn't sure if he expected to be at media day for the Pacers. It was uncomfortable. It was weird. He had some terrible games at the beginning of the season. Then things changed, and things can change. And Miles Turner's still a Pacer. Damian Lillard, who knows if he'll ever actually be a Heat man. And that would be really tough for Miami given their situation.
All right, we'll go to the next big what if here in this offseason. Everybody's talking about Philly. This one might be more likely. Philly having to keep James Harden. We'll talk about that next. First, today's show is brought to you by Jase Medical. Jase Medical is giving you what's called the Jase case. Jase Medical. The Jase case is going to give you that peace of mind when you are somewhere where you can't get in touch with the doctor, you can't get in touch with the people that, emergency personnel, whatever, whether it's you're caught in a storm, whether you're out camping or hiking, or you're just stuck somewhere, you get some sort of cut, you need some sort of emergency kind of medical care. The Jase case offers you 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use, gives you that peace of mind. All right, that peace of mind, you cannot put a price on it, but I'll tell you what, you can save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics at Jase Medical. Plus, you get $20 off by using the code Locked On when you check out at jasemedical.com. Again, that's jasemedical.com. It's very simple. It's doctor created. It's doctor approved. You go online, you fill out a form, you get a prescription, and then those life-saving medications get delivered right to your door. It's 5 antibiotics. It's peace of mind that you can have access to in an emergency, and Jase Medical makes sure you have that in hand. So again, save $360 more than that. Plus you get a $20 off with the code Locked On at jasemedical.com. That's jasemedical.com. I want to thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Every NBA team is represented here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So make sure you're checking out. We talked about the Heat. Check out Locked On Heat. We're going to talk now about the Sixers. Check out Locked On Sixers. What is happening with Philly and James Harden? What if they have to keep, Tony, the malcontent James Harden? He seems to have a problem, obviously, with Daryl Morey, but it seems to be a problem only with Daryl Morey. So is it possible that he can go back on his I'll never play for a team he's involved with and just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be a professional. I'm going to put this personal thing aside. I can come back to Philly. I can play with Joel Embiid. I love my teammates. I love Nick Nurse. I'm excited for this team. I can come out here and play to the best of my abilities. Do you think that is possible for James Harden?
I do. You know why? Because he did it once before with the Houston Rockets. And that was different, but Morey was the exact end too. And he also completely cratered that situation. I forget how many games in when he said, no, this is stupid. I don't want to do this anymore. Then he got traded anyway. But he did come back and he went to camp and he was overweight, but played fine enough. And they tried to win with him and John Wall, and it was weird and dumb, but he sucked it up and he went back to the Rockets. And I kind of think this one is what you just said, going to end up that way, both because the relationship issue he has is only, it sounds like, per what he has said himself, to be clear, with Daryl Morey, but also because it's just nothing that makes sense. If the Clippers aren't going to do this, I guess for the Heat, for the reasons we just said, like maybe if they can't get Dame, but nothing really makes sense just with Harden's style and what he would do to some of these other teams, or to other teams that have point guards don't need someone like him. His contract situation, he can't be extended. Like all these factors say his trade value is probably not that high, even though he had good moments last season. So the best thing the Sixers can have from an asset perspective is James Harden.
Yeah.
So they aren't in a rush to trade him and give him away because they have the Embiid dynamic looming as well. They have this cap space next summer dynamic looming. Like everyone is incentivized in Philly to stick in the current situation, which is not the case for the Heat, which is not the case for the Blazers, but it is the case for the Sixers. Their best case scenario is Harden sucks it up and they're a better team, whereas that's not the best case for the other teams we just talked about. So this one seems kind of likely, more likely to me at least, to not happen as a trade because it seems like there's way less downside for everybody involved.
I agree with you. And I think it's much more likely that Daryl Morey, now it's been the summer. We've heard about Embiid thinking that Daryl was ghosting him because of whatever. Maybe they were afraid of another tampering fine, or maybe they were whatever. But that whole thing, obviously James Harden has not made himself very readily available to anybody on the Sixers, right? He's been in China. He's been around. It's not like he's taking a lot of phone calls. So this is the first opportunity for a Daryl Morey, James Harden, face-to-face kind of trying to bury the hatchet. And I think if Daryl Morey just sucks it up, regardless of whether he feels he's been right or wrong, if he can go to James Harden on day one, pull him aside and be like, look, man, this has been one big misunderstanding. He can play the whole thing. We've been fined before and we weren't trying to ghost you. We just know it's like the cops were watching. And so we couldn't do anything because we knew the NBA was watching us. So like he can get to James Harden and he can put his spin on things and be like, hey, we need you. We do love you. We do want you back. We want all of this stuff. This has been a misunderstanding that's gotten way out of control and we want to make it right. And maybe there is a way to make it right. Maybe, I don't know what contractually they can do. Maybe they find a way to, I don't know if they're allowed to extend them at this point or what, but regardless, if he can find a way to get to James Harden and say, we can make this right, and Harden can come back and say, all right, I am committed, with the understanding that, he doesn't have any other options. It's not a big market. People don't want to trade for James Harden, and he doesn't want to go to certain places. So if it's limited, then if he's not going to go to another place because either they don't want him or he doesn't want to go there, then you got to stay in Philly. The rules are that you have to play, and you just do your best and try to pump up your value so other teams can say, hey, you know what? I do want James Harden because look at what he's doing. He's motivated. I'd love to get a motivated James Harden. And it is in his best interest to come in and be motivated. His agent, Tony, even said he's going to come in, be the best shape of his life, and he's going to be back to MVP level. He has to do it, even if he wants out of Philly. He has to do it so he can get out of Philly. It's his only way out.
There's one more conversation I think that's important on day one of whatever Sixers season day one is. What did Joel Embiid say to James Harden? Like, there's no MVP. I almost said MVP candidate. He's literally the MVP. There is no MVP on the Blazers who's like, hey, yo, Dame, we can do this. Or, Miami's got good players, but they're not in the same situation, right? Like if Embiid comes up and says, yo, I get it. Like this dude can be a jerk. He'll probably use a different word. But I get it.
Words that we can't use.
Exactly. Look at your contract. Like we were so close to beating Boston last year. Like we can do this. We're good enough. We got better. We got Kelly Oubre right now. I can't believe he's come up in both segments. They added some other talent, like Maxey should be better. Like they have a new coach, right? Like it's very plausible to me that Embiid could say all this. That seems like their last effort pitch that would work. Is that Harden comes in and that gets to him because he's played for Morey for forever, right? He knows Daryl Morey pretty well. Like I have trouble believing that they have had, they're going to be able to easily get over that. But a guy like Embiid being your teammate is the best way to maybe boost your value and look good and have a good season. And maybe it sucks, but hey, then you're a free agent next year. And if you play well and do what you say you're going to do, be in the best shape, maybe you'll get your money that way. So that's the conversation I think is important here.
Yeah. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. Harden comes in, plays great, figures out a way to put his past playoff failures behind him. Him and Embiid continue with the best pick and roll in the NBA. And Philly breaks through, wins a championship. They have a big parade. And now Harden is a free agent, a championship winning free agent point guard. That's your ticket. That's your ticket. And even if he says mid-season, I'm done, I can't, this is untenable, he still has to be his absolute best to get traded in December or January or February. He has to. So the what if Philly keeps Harden, that people in Philly are like, what if? Like that's what we're all hoping for. So
yeah. To me, Philly was probably amped when he opted in because of this exact situation. Sense,
but yeah.
Right. It was super weird. Well, I bet he knew that he couldn't get enough money as a free agent either. But they're probably like, awesome. We were worried we'd have to do this all before July 1. This is great. Now we have a whole season to try to make this work because you're the best asset we can get here. So I think the what if, everybody's happy with this except for James Harden, it seems. That was unlike the other two teams we talked about earlier who are all unhappy. Everyone is happy here but James.
That's a total misfire by the Harden camp. All right. Somebody who was traded, Malcolm Brogdon was traded by the Boston Celtics, but he was untraded by the LA Clippers. Should there be concern in Boston? We'll talk about that next. First, today's show is brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. And right now, if you got $5, just put $5 in there, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. New customer. That's all you got to be. New customer, $5 bet. Boom, $200 in bonus bets. That's a great reason to join FanDuel right now. And if you've been thinking about it, this is what more do you want? $200 in free money. Super easy to use app. Very simple. The tabs are all across the top. You can flip through whatever sports you want. You want spreads, player props, over-unders, more, whatever you want. It's there on FanDuel.com. Go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn to sign up and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. If you're going to do it, we'll just ask you to please gamble responsibly. Thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. We're here for you 5 days a week. Tomorrow, Nick Angstead, Pat the Designer. Pat the Designer.
Both are accurate.
He's very entertaining. It is a very entertaining show. One of my favorite shows on the network when those two guys are going. It's fun. The opinions are flying. You can check that out. Malcolm Brogdon is, upset. I can speak to that as a guy who covers the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics obviously had Malcolm Brogdon traded in the Kristaps Porzingis trade. The LA Clippers backed out for some reason. It was portrayed as a medical thing, but later it kind of seemed like it wasn't the medicals. It was the perhaps a pursuit of James Harden that may have come along. Regardless, all of the trade is done stuff was undone. Marcus Smart ends up leaving Boston, and that leaves the Celtics and Malcolm Brogdon in a little bit of a pinch. Gary Washburn, who covers the team for the Boston Globe, recently said, I believe it was on a podcast, that he's concerned about Malcolm Brogdon because the last we heard, he was pissed off, and we haven't heard anything from Brogdon all summer. I can tell you, Tony, I talked to Joe Mazzulla with a bunch of other reporters on the day that Jaylen Brown signed his huge contract extension. And usually when there's spin, They usually, when something's going on, they can spin it. He didn't spin it. He said, yeah, we're going to have to work to repair that relationship. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. So let's play a game of real or fake, Tony. Malcolm Brogdon will be upset with the Celtics and be a detriment to them this season.
Ooh, the and makes this harder. Upset with the Celtics, you just said it. I mean, real for sure. And the like we said earlier, we're uniquely qualified on this. I'm on the Pacers side. He made it clear. He told me during the season at shoot around when Boston was here in Indiana, he chose Boston among the teams. The Pacers said, hey, here's the offers we have for you. Presumably all roughly equal value to us. Where would you like to go? Right. Boston, Toronto being the top two. I think Washington was in there before the draft. They came out of it, whatever. And he chose Boston, right? He thought he'd have a good role there. He thought he'd have a good chance at winning a championship. They were pretty close, right? Had a good season. Made a lot of sense. One game away for the finals for him to choose them. And then right away they go, hey, just kidding. Just kidding. And it didn't happen, but I get, and he is, usually spends a lot of his summers in Africa too, right? So communication with him can be trickier. It's like all on the phone. It can't be face to face. So I get why he could be like, I just chose you guys. This is exactly what I wanted. And immediately you turn around and try to trade me for an upgrade. But is it actually going to cause a strain where he's like pissed all season? I don't think so. He's a pretty mature dude. He's a pretty big picture kind of guy all the time. I think you could speak to that also. So I imagine like, yeah, he won't be like thrilled, certainly. I think it'll, like we just talked about some of the conversations that'll be required by other teams. That might be required here. Maybe it's already happened. But I don't think he's the kind of guy that will make it a problem, but he could be someone who it's like a cloud over his head all season, whether that's with an injury, whether that's with his play, whether that's with the trade deadline approaching, who knows? But that's where I think it'll bother him a little more.
I'm curious. I have a feeling that he, being the meticulous, thoughtful guy that he is, he understands the business of the NBA. And so he will be more likely than others to say, hey, this is how it goes. Nothing I can do about it. I'm not going to take it out on my teammates because they had nothing to do with this. Let's go out there and I'm going to try to do what I need to do for myself, which is win a championship. And so as pissed as he is, I can see him. I can say it's probably fake and that he will come in. He will probably admit, yep, that kind of stung, but got to move forward. The only thing that really is holding me back from the full-throated this is fake is the reason why the Celtics were willing to trade him. And that's this new collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah.
It's not that they said this Malcolm Brogdon thing didn't work out. He was the sixth man of the year. And yes, he got that elbow injury at the worst possible time, but he stayed healthy all season long for the most part. They managed him well. He was really important to them and was a good teammate. As you know, every indication was guys really enjoyed playing with him and everything was fine. So the CBA and the second apron and the Celtics being a very expensive team is why he ended up as part of a trade. It's why a trade was even possible or thought of. The Celtics fell short in the finals and the conference finals. They needed to make a move, and $22 million is a hell of a contract to be moved, and it would have given them a lot more leverage. If they had made that move, they might have been able to keep Grant Williams and kick the Grant Williams can down the road a season. Maybe they would have had to trade him next year, but the difference in the money between Smart and Brogdon was about $4 million or so. They're $3 million shy of the second apron. Now they'd be $6 million shy of the second apron if it was reversed. Now that extra $6 million, if that goes to somebody else, maybe it changes who they sign, whatever it is, it would have just given them more flexibility. And my point here is next season, they are even closer In fact, at this point, they're over the line. $22 million is a hell of a contract to be traded to get you down to where you need to go. So Brogdon might be able to get past this season and this offseason and being traded, but he also has to know that you're probably gone after this season because financially it's unsustainable to keep Jaylen Brown on that new deal, Jason Tatum still making whatever he's making, Porzingis on the first year of his extension, and still feel the team. Derek White makes a fair amount of money there, and he's due for an extension. There's a lot of money being spent in Boston. Something's going to have to give, and it all signs point to Brogdon. So I'm less concerned about him getting past this past summer. It's knowing what the future brings. That can he put that aside and still have a good season for Boston?
Yeah, that's the tricky part. The Suns will be dealing with this too, but obviously the Celtics and everybody's going to try to get ahead of it, right? Because come July 1 of next year, it's way harder to trade Malcolm Brogdon if you're a second apron Celtics team, right? So there is value to doing it this summer or even in February or even after the playoffs, which would be so weird. But what these teams have to consider now, right? Big pay bump coming for a lot of guys, most notably Jaylen Brown. But the year after, it gets even higher, right? So you can't re-sign him. There's just no way. So if you can get something for him and you're the Celtics, you gotta try, right? He's not in the untradeable tier. You gotta try. So it makes all the sense in the world that they tried to do it. Ended up having to do something else very significant, and perhaps the 2 seconds they got in the smart trade two firsts they got in the smart trade with Brogdon could get you something awesome. Who knows? They have some optionality now, but that is a great point. I think that the second apron is a driver, and hopefully he can understand that if you're the Celtics.
Yeah, man, I still can't get over that second apron. Next summer is gonna make things crazy.
I don't think people realize because the rules change on July 1, but they're the current rules on June 30. And the second apron gets fully implemented then. So like after the draft but before free agency will still be nuts. That's probably the only time that will ever happen. Usually there's like a little gap with all these rumors flying about free agency. Like that week, because guys can negotiate with their current team and because of the changing rules coming, is going to be crazy because everybody's going to have to straighten everything out before July 1 comes. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah. We're going to see a flurry of trades and then free agency opens.
Exactly. It will be so weird. It will be the only summer that will probably happen for a while.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. The CBA next offseason / postseason weird time is going to be bonkers crazy. So
that's why a lot of insiders have predicted lots of star trades in the next whatever number you want to use, 18 months or so. And I think they're probably going to be right.
Yeah. There's a lot of contracts that have to go. All right. That's going to make a fun, like, I hope that all happens on a Tuesday. So I get to talk about that next year. Selfishly on a Tuesday, like, give me all the trades. All right. Tony, thanks for stepping in. That's our 6th man of the year, Tony East, here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Find Tony on Twitter at Tony R East. Find me at John_Karalis. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. Again, Nick Angstead, Pat the Designer tomorrow. Make sure you're tuned into that. I would love it now if you would share the podcast, spread the word, tell everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On NBA podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.